Okay, so Maggie's up next. I am going to quickly introduce Maggie. Hi, Maggie, there you are. Maggie is currently a product manager for Indigo Ag, but she was also coordinating the Southwest Seed Partnership in 2018 and 2019. And in 2020, Maggie developed a new pre-variety germplasm certification program for the state of New Mexico. And so she's going to be providing an update on that work. And you're all set, Maggie, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Marianne. I'll work on pulling up my PowerPoint here.
Okay, perfect.
All right, thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to be providing an update today on New Mexico seed certification. I'm providing this update on behalf of the New Mexico State University Seed Certification and Noxious Weed Free Program, which is our seed certifying agency here in New Mexico, as well as the Institute for Applied Ecology. And we do just want to recognize the funding from the New Mexico State Bureau of Land Management that went into helping develop this program. So I'm going to be touching on a couple of topics today. The first is seed certification and its role in native plant materials development. So why is it so important? The second is what went into establishing a pre-varietal germplasm or PVG program for New Mexico. And that's the program under which we are now able to certify native plant materials. And the third piece of my talk will be an update on the New Mexico PVG pilot that we conducted with IAE and Bamert Seed Company in 2021. So first off, native seed certification, or seed certification, why is it so important? So seed certification standards and programs exist for a myriad number of crops, peanuts, corn, alfalfa. Certification standards are really important for ensuring quality and identity and purity of seed. Minimum standards for seed certification are established by the Association of Official Seed Certifying Agencies, or AOSCA. And seed certification is facilitated by a seed certifying agency. The seed certifying agency, as I mentioned, in New Mexico is based out of New Mexico State University, and it's a seed certification and noxious weed free program. Philip Lujan and Chuck Havlick are the representatives from the seed certification noxious weed free program that we have been working with and who are seed certifiers for New Mexico. Seed certification agencies are able to establish requirements or standards that are additional to the minimum standards set by AOSCA. And so you'll see slightly different standards by state. And a really important thing for consumers of seed to understand is that seed tags are the mark of certified seed. This is something that the end consumer can look to understand what they're purchasing. Here I just have an example of a seed tag for source identified seed, and this is just a template, but seed tags are different colors depending on the certification track. Source identified seed is yellow. I'll talk a little bit about source identified seed later in the presentation, but as consumers of native seed, this is something that you should be aware of and look for when you're purchasing native seed. So what is the role of seed certification when it comes to native plant materials? As everybody's mentioned today and in the past and yesterday as well, we're all working really hard to protect and restore native habitats, and using high quality plant materials is critical for that mission. So seed certification provides this additional safeguard and sets a standard for the industry to follow. The seed certification provides this third-party verification to confirm the identity and source of the seed. So this is source identification. They also provide field inspections and seed analysis and set these requirements to help minimize contaminants to restoration sites in the case of using native plant materials. Seed certification also sets specific standards for germination and purity in weed seed that are based on plant biology and industry knowledge. And they provide set limitations on generation to help support healthy wild populations and help us to maximize genetic diversity and resiliency within these populations. And as I mentioned in the last slide, ultimately, they provide this kind of this mark for the end user to look for to be able to make informed seed purchases and have confidence in the products that they're buying. So native plant materials specifically are certified under pre-varietal germplasm standard, or PVG. PVG standards apply to trees, shrubs, forbs, or grasses. And PVG standards specifically address plant materials that have not yet been released as a variety. There's a couple of different tracks under PVG standards, either natural track germplasm or manipulated track, where natural track germplasm is an unrestricted representation of the wild plant population. So this means that we weren't selecting for, or the germplasm developer was not selecting for specific traits as part of building out that accession. Whereas manipulated track germplasm is where certain seed accessions were perhaps hybridized or selected for specific traits. And source identified seed, as we spoke about previously, source identified seed is a really commonly utilized PVG category that falls under natural track germplasm. And this is something that the development of is pretty high priority for federal and state land management agencies because developing source identified germplasm helps to support our national seed strategy and ensuring high genetic diversity among these populations and in restoration sites. So that's a little bit about seed certification and its role in native plant material development and why we care so much about getting this certification program up and running in New Mexico. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about what actually went into establishing this PVG program. So there previously was no PVG program for New Mexico. There were some standards in the New Mexico Seed Certification Manual that applied to native plants, but they weren't in full compliance with AOSCA minimum standards. So we worked to really revamp these standards. So there were 6 steps that went into this program. The first was funding, then coordination, gathering resources, incorporating standards into existing documents, field testing the program, and then seed certification outreach. So funding was supplied by the New Mexico Bureau of Land Management to the Institute for Applied Ecology through a partnership agreement for research, coordination, standard development. And funding, as we all know, can often be a limiting factor in being able to really get work done. So this was a help to the New Mexico Seed Certifying Agency to be able to have some extra capacity to develop this program. So there was close coordination between IAE and the Seed Certification and Noxious Weed Free program to develop these standards. A lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, a couple of site visits. And as part of the coordination, this kind of third step was gathering resources. So we did a number of interviews with representatives from other PVG programs across the Western US in particular, and did a literature review of different documents that were available and worked to adapt the AOSCA PVG standards for New Mexico, as well as to develop supporting documents for applications and other forms for the program. And then the PVG standards were then finalized and incorporated into the New Mexico Seed Certification Manual, along with all of the other certification standards that already existed for other crops. And then the 5th step, which I'm going to speak about a little bit more in depth next, is this step 2, field test the program. So IAE and Bammert Seed Company, based out of Muleshoe, Texas, worked to enroll the first native seed production field. This was a G1 field in the PVG program for 2021. And then the final step, seed certification outreach, is what I'm doing right now. So it's sharing more about the program, letting germplasm developers, seed producers, agencies, seed consumers know that this program exists and that it's ready to start enrolling seeds in field. So the last part of my presentation is going to be an update on the New Mexico PVG pilot. So there's 4 primary roles that go into certifying a seed field or certifying G1 seed through the PVG program. The first is germplasm development, or the germplasm developer. Then there's the seed producer, the seed certifying agency, as well as the end user. So in this case, for this 2021 pilot, the germplasm developer was the Institute for Applied Ecology. IAE and partners had done collections from a number of species that they were ready to get certified under the PVG standards. So IAE filed a New Mexico pre-varietal germplasm application form. They then submitted site logs, herbarium vouchers, GPS locations to the New Mexico State University Seed Certification Noxious Weed Free Program, or the seed certifying agency in this case. So they submitted all of that information, all of that data, and supported the seed certifying agency in going out to verify the identity and source of the seed. So going out to these collection sites where the seed came from, as well as evaluating seed samples. So the second part of this program that was kind of happening concurrently was Bamert Seed filed a New Mexico pre-varietal germplasm tag request form. And then they supported the seed certifying agency in going out and conducting these seedling and field inspections. That happened this fall. The seed is currently being cleaned, but once it has been cleaned, the seed certifying agency will evaluate the results from the seed analysis. And then assuming that the seed certifying agency is happy with the results of their source identification visits and also seedling and field inspections and the results of the seed sample, they will issue a tag and they will tag that seed lot. And then the final step is the end user, the end consumer of that seed is able to review that seed tag, confirm that they know what the results are, that they're comfortable using that seed for their project. And then they can apply that certified seed to their restoration site and have that extra confidence that the seed is of the highest quality. So I'll go into a little bit more detail here about what verifying the identity and collection site actually looked like. So these are the species that were certified this year, or that are, I guess we have to finalize the certification and issue the seed lot or seed tags once those seed results are available, the analysis results are available. But these are the species that were entered into the certification program this year. As you can see, these accessions were made up of a number of populations. As part of the seed certification protocol, 20% of the total populations within the accession were selected for site visits. And so we attempted to round up. In some cases, the populations were no longer available. And so in some cases, we had to round down, but attempted to round up. And then this was the number of populations in the far right column that were visited by Philip and Chuck this fall to confirm the source. IAE, as the germplasm developer, again, provided a number of resources. They filled out the pre-varietal germplasm application, which had a bunch of information specific to that germplasm, the number of populations, locations, things like that. And then they provided coordinates and maps of where those populations occur and notes on how to find them. And then there were a number of IAE staff that went out and supported the seed certifying folks in the field to help them locate those populations as well. So the other piece of this was conducting the seedling and field inspections. So seed certification noxious weed free program went out to the fields. They inspected the fields, considered isolation distance, looked for weeds, and filled out an inspector's report. And then the last step will be for them to review the seed analysis results to confirm that the seed meets standards for germplasm or germination, viability, and weed seed thresholds that are set as part of this PVG program. And then the final step will be to issue a seed tag. And so again, this is just a template for source identified seed. It is yellow in color and provides a lot of details that the end seed consumer can look to know more about that germplasm that they are purchasing. And again, this will be G1 germplasm from this production field. And just the tag itself is a mark of quality for the seed consumer to refer to. So there are a number of PVG resources and documentation that are on the seed certification noxious weed free program website. I have the link here. Feel free to reach out to me. Also, I'm happy to email it to you, or you can reach out to Philip Lujan for more information. And I do want to I have a couple of acknowledgements. There were a number of folks from the IAE team, from the seed certification noxious weed free program, from the New Mexico Bureau of Land Management, the Oregon Seed Certification Service, and of course, Bamert Seed Company that supported in developing this PVG program and piloting it in 2021. And that is all I have for you today. Feel free to reach out to me if you have additional questions, or of course, Philip Lujan, who was not able to join us today, but he is the representative for our New Mexico Seed Certifying Agency. So please feel free to reach out. And then I think we probably have a couple minutes left for questions.
Yes, thanks so much, Maggie, for that really informative presentation about the seed certification. We do have a few questions, which I'll be pulling from the Q&A box and addressing the ones that have the most likes first. So remember to use the Q&A box and like questions that you're interested in. So to start, things are jumping around. What labs are used for sample analysis and who picks the lab? Basically, with the intrinsic variation among labs and test results, how do you keep vendors from shopping for tests that are used for tags?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I definitely understand where it comes from. Melanie could speak to this a little bit more, but my understanding of how this has played out in 2021 is that it is up to the producer to choose the lab. Melanie, do you have any additional insight? I know this is something that's kind of been developing.
That's correct at this time, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and what is the approximate cost to get a seed sample certified?
Thank you. So there are some fees that go along with this program. They are set by the seed certification noxious weed free program. And I believe they're consistent across other crops as well. But there's some baseline fees. So there's some fees for driving time, for inspection time. Those are hourly fees. There's mileage fees. There are fees for the labels. And then there's some field certification or inspection fees. And at the beginning, in late 2020, those fees were $6 an acre for less than 10,000 total acres, which I think most of our fields will be. But that could change and is kind of up to the discretion of the seed certifying agency. But I believe they are listed on the website, and you can reach out to Philip if you have additional questions.
All right, and then someone is asking if you could explain the example tag from one of your slides.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So as I mentioned, this is the source identified seed tag is yellow. So that is the color that you want to look for to find source identified seed that is certified under the PVG program. So you have the agency logo that will go here. So that'll be the logo of the seed certification noxious weed free program. You have the species name, the common name, a germplasm ID and generation. So the germplasm ID will be given by the seed certifying agency, and then the generation, is it G0, is it G1, is it G2, et cetera. And then you have the where the G, in this case, this example is G3 seed. So where it was grown, so that's where the production field is. The G0 state region elevation would be where that source population came from, whether it was an indigenous or non-indigenous species, and then natural track, which source identified seeds should all be natural track. And then there's a lot number that's assigned to it. This is just an example. The seeds or the tags from the seed certification noxious weed free program might look a little bit different than this. I actually didn't have a copy of that on hand. I think Philip is developing that still. But this is kind of a high level, the information that would go into it. And so as a seed consumer, you can look to see, where did that G0 come from? Is it in the zone that I want it to be in? And that can help inform your decision.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for one more quick question. Is there a similar certification process in Arizona? And I think someone in the chat also asked about California.
Thanks. So I actually don't know off the top of my head all of the states that do have a PVG program. Melanie, maybe you could speak to that some more and kind of what the thinking is for Arizona.
Arizona does not, California does.
Okay, thank you. So if you are in a state that does not have a PVG program and you're looking to develop one, I would recommend reaching out to your seed certifying agency. You should be able to find that online. And if this is something that they don't have the funding or capacity to develop, then think about some partners who might be interested and start to engage them. That was what happened in New Mexico.
All right. Thanks so much, Maggie.
Thank you.
And over to Maria.
Yes, thanks again, Maggie.